Hello, friends. My name's host Eric. I am the host of the world's greatest television program. Namely, talking with famous people. Yes, that's right. You found your way to the world's greatest television program. And because it's morning, you're going to discover today's episode is filled with sunshine. The delightful rays of sunlight. A little hot, a little strong, but creamery is fantastic. Oh my goodness. Would you look who's here? It's Kankan Krishna Sarmapagu. It's Kankan Krishna Sarmapagu. Put your poo on my shoe, Kankan Krishna Sarmapagu. Kankan Krishna Sarmapagu. It's been a long time since I sang the Kankan Krishna Sarmapagu song. I missed that song. I didn't even realize I missed it, but I was missing it. I missed that song, which means, Kankan Krishna Sarmapagu, that I've missed you. It's true. How's India treating you? Are there too many Indians? That's your complaint every day when you go out of the house. Jesus Christ, there are too many Indians around here. That would be a funny complaint, King Krishna Sarmapagu. Yeah, it's fine. I like it fine around here, except, God, there's just too many Indians around here. That'd be funny. My poor kitty managed to hurt herself again somehow. That kitty of mine, her legs are just constant injury fests. This time she's hurt one of her front paws and she's limping a little bit. I don't have any idea how she hurt it, even. You're bored with life? It's pronounced Dentici. You guys, you're pronouncing it wrong. It's not Dentici, and it's not Dentis. It's Dentici. God. You guys have to stop pronouncing it wrong in typing form, in text. Your text is mispronouncing his name. I need a what? It rhymes with bear cut. Can you guess what it is? That's right, it's haircut. I need a haircut. I need somebody to cut my hair. Not just one of them, many of my hairs. Well, I'm so addicted to my wonderful kitty friend. No, totally different paw. This time it's one of the front paws. I have no idea what she did to it. She just limping a little bit on it. At least she's in here and fine and everything. It's just... I gotta say, I like that gelato. Pretty good and stony. I gotta figure out what time my typing is today. I wish Isaiah Rude would just show up and tell me. Okay, 5 p.m. Cool. Five p.m. Yeah, I mean, I might file for unemployment, but I wasn't really employed by anybody officially this year. All my money is under the table. So I don't know if I mean, I'm not really making any money enough to even worry about, but I'll definitely encourage Rachel to do that. And the thing is, I actually would like to get Rachel successfully onto disability, which she's eligible for, even though I find that whole principle appalling. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I lost some money here on this, but uh, you know, I, it's one of those things where, as always, I am blessed, lucky, fortunate, and I've got sorry to hear that, Winston's mom. I mean, the thing is, the reason Rachel should be able to get this disability without too much trouble, or she, I guess, deserves it, is she's got this long history of being on these hardcore drugs. You know, when you're taking the kind of amount of crazy pills she was taking, it's easy to get. People go, okay, that's real. You're not bullshitting. You're in a toxic relationship. Weren't you single yesterday? I mean, deserving or not, uh, if it's available, we should get it because we can use the money. Your heart's in so much pain. Yesterday you were single, Cloud. How could you be in a toxic relationship already and your heart be in so much pain already? How did that happen so fast? That's what I want to know. You need to give up a part of yourself to sustain it. Yeah, well, that's not a good idea for a relationship. I mean, there's some kinds of sacrifices that are appropriate and some kinds that aren't. Can we do a watch along with some episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine? I mean, I think I'd probably get copyright busted, you know? Well, Brock Lesnar, I guess you weren't here last night when I totally won the argument. Which is to say that I put links to several pieces of data that were convincing. So, yeah. Maybe check last night's stream and you'll see why you're wrong, Brock Lesnar. What I proved last night was that even the place where it's absolutely the worst, Italy, the death rate and the increase in total deaths is equivalent to a random flu spike in 2015. Totally equivalent. And that's in Italy, in the worst place. And do you know that 99% of Italian deaths are over 75 years old with at least one pre-existing condition? And half of them have 3 pre-existing conditions or more. I mean, it's cut and dry. Case fucking closed, you know? Case fucking closed. Even in Italy, where it's the worst, everyone's making such a big fuss about it. It's no worse than a 2015 spike due to the flu. That wins the point right there. It's just so decisive. Brock Lesnar is so wrong. It's shocking. I totally win. No, Cloud, you shouldn't. What do I think about herd immunity? I mean, the thing is, when nature runs its course, that's what you get, right? Now, we have to make a decision sometimes, I guess, if the thing that was running its course was going to kill 10% of people, fine, you know? But when it's killing less than 0.2% of people, it's not a good thing. Yeah, Claude, that's the thing. You want to find somebody with whom it's easy, by and large. By and large, everything goes easy, squeezy, smooth, and smeezy. You don't want to have something that's complicated or difficult. Good relationships are easy. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't sometimes problems, as evidence in mine, but no, it's not, Cloud. It's the one to avoid. Good relationships have very little conflict, very little dispute or point of disagreement or whatever. Ronan Farrow is a journalist. Are they homosexuals? You know, Rachel asked me yesterday in the car if I could spend a day as a famous person, a celebrity or something, living or dead, who would I choose? And I said Dean Martin. I think that would be interesting, you know. A day as Dean Martin hanging out with the Rat Pack. I wouldn't want to be Frank Sinatra, dude. He's just so like out of hand in general. He's such a drunk and everything, you know. But Dean Martin was widely beloved. The Rat Pack were mobbed up apparently and involved with the Italians. Oh, I feel poop coming on. It's that morning poop time. I had a nice nighttime poop yesterday during the live stream. Seems like live streaming brings on the need to poop in me. Oh, I agree, Cloud. Settling on some half-assed relationship is not the solution. You want one that's easy. It's easy squeezy. I gotta go poop now. I'll be back. That was a long and lean poop. Good morning, Lantern-esque. What do I mean when I say that was a long and lean poop? Well, it took a long time to get from the beginning of the poop to the end of the poop out of my butthole. But it wasn't a fat poop, you know. That's what I mean. People are complicated and rarely bad or good, but a whole bunch of conflicting things at the same time. Well, I would say, Hero Lamb, that most people are good, and there are a few people who are bad. Cloud would argue that FI users are deeper than TI users emotionally. They have way more nuance. I guess that's true, but I'm not sure it's. I mean, I don't personally view it as really desirable. You know, I find that having more nuance in your own particular emotions means being less universal and less justified in general. So I guess it depends what you prioritize, you know? Jung said that as far as he could see, we are only here to light the way in the darkness for other people. Very every tool of him. You know? Eric, well, everyone views his own type as the best. I don't view my type as the best. I would say I do have a naturally suspicious approach towards, or suspicious mindset towards FI. I recognize FI as obviously having its important place in life, but I also see it as the source of a lot of difficulties. You know, it's like when I'm encountering people who are being unreasonable, stubborn, fussy, what I'm usually encountering, of course, is FI. Now, in myself, of course, poor FI, or I guess you'd say childlike FI, unnuanced FI, means I've been in a series of bad relationships, you know? It's like the story A Man of Ideas by Sherwin Anderson, which I've read before um, as a perfect example of an ENTP character. In that story, he gets with this like girl that's well, she's the sister of there's like this sort of criminal, dangerous family in town, and they have this uh, spinster girl in the family, and he gets with her, and then he like successfully wins over the criminal people, and they're all following him around now too. And is that the right chick for him? No, for surely not. But he has no idea. Same with me. My whole life until this relationship, I've I've put up with all kinds of shit I shouldn't have put up with. It took me till my late 40s to realize, okay, I should have what I need and want in a relationship as well. Well, as a TI user, Cloud, I don't see understanding um, as incorporating. So just because I understand things doesn't mean I make them part of myself in terms of my identity. I don't suddenly start thinking of myself as an FI person would because I try to understand what FI is and be able to explain what it is in a universal or communicable way, even though it's the most particularist of all functions, probably. Um, well, that's true, but I'm saying one of the reasons why, the primary reason why I want to understand or know something is so that I am able to describe it. I mean, even if those are different things, Cloud, surely you'd agree that one who understands or knows something is able to describe it. As Cloud once again determinedly battles to try to attain adversarialness. That's a good that's a good idea, Winston's mom. It's a good idea. We've got one thing on the schedule for today. It's a big chore we gotta do. Rachel needs to deposit a check with her phone. That's our big plan for the day. Because she thought she had lost her ATM card. This is this is kind of textbook Rachel move. No offense, Rachel, but she quote unquote lost her ATM card. Called the bank, told them she lost it, and then of course found her ATM card. So that's the kind of silly shit we got to deal with all the time around here. But that's no big deal. No big whoops, you know. Easy squeezy as things go. I do want to understand FI better. And the reason is because, well, for a lot of the free will kind of stuff we've been talking about, Cloud, to be free, I need to be less than entirely reflexive to have any demonstrable freedom. So, understanding and learning the ways in which my default perspectives create reflexive responses to things, and understanding what the alternative responses are, um, it enables me to choose more freely, you know? I mean, there's no disputing, Cloud, that a given response to something can be more or less reflexive. So, that's all there is to it. Uh, Once I've learned that my reflexive response to something is probably not the best, then I have a choice. If I want to respond that same way or if I want to try to accommodate. Well, why do free will choices have to be in a vacuum? Can you give me any behavior at all that's in a vacuum? No. So why would you set that criterion for free will? I mean, yes, it's true that all behavior occurs in context. That doesn't make it not free. But my point, Cloud, is that it's possible to move from more reflexive to less reflexive in response to something. Correct or no? You can learn, right? Okay. So then we need to describe the unit that's being changed there. You see what I'm saying? Um, that's meaningless because, first of all, look, we know it's bullshit. Why? Definition of FI is it's a responsibility. That's not FI. That's not a cognitive function. Cognitive function is not a responsibility. Period. It's complete bullshit. Well, you keep ignoring what I was saying, though, Cloud, which is that with understanding, one can become less reactionary. Yeah, Swift Eagle, reflexive like reactionary, like reflex. We understand that there's a range of manners in which we respond to things. In a certain context, we're very reactive. In other contexts, we're more mindful or deliberate. It really depends on what type you are. For me, growth means more deliberation and some inclusion of an introverted feelings kind of deliberative process. So, like, if you were going to correctly define FI, you'd begin with a deliberative process because that's what it is. It's not our responsibility. Good morning, emailed Anthrax. The problem with anybody trying to define cognitive functions without starting at the right spot is they're guaranteed to get it wrong. If you're not talking initially about fields, vectors, objects, stuff like that, then you're not talking about a system that is meaningful. Oh, Cloud. Cognitive functions are functions, like in math, like plus and minus, times, divided by, functions. I mean, it's like, hello, the word functions means functions. This isn't rocket science. Okay, Cloud, you are correct. TE people value efficiency. That doesn't mean that TE is a value. Okay. Well, nevertheless, Fussology, as a consequence, that means he's not defining cognitive functions. He's talking about something that correlates with them, maybe. But he's not talking about cognitive functions. After all, a function is a function. It's an operation one executes in some sense. This is the problem. If you're not operationalizing your terms, then you're not making any real arguments. And that's the problem. how does that term operationalize for him? In other words, how does it link to a framework? When I say I'm operationalizing my terms, what I specifically mean is like if I define a cognitive function as a deliberative process that, those terms link in with my other terms so that they convert. When Fung shuns us all as a cognitive, who's Fung? That definition there is better, but still wrong. And the reason why it's wrong is because of the thing I've realized here and figured out about functions and philosophy in general. The missing piece in describing the relationship between information, objects, subjects is agents. There's a third class of thing. It's not just subject object, it's agent subject object because of the illocutionary frame. And so if you're trying, like Hillman did there, to do what I tried to do for a long time, banging my head against the wall until I realized we were missing one, is you try to do a grammatical kind of critique like that, where you go, okay, look, this is ultimately all language based. We're talking about subjects and predicates and yada, yada, yada. And Hellman takes a smart approach, okay? Hellman takes a smart approach there. That's exactly the approach I took for a long time, trying to figure out what the mechanics of the subject, object, and information flow and fields were. Well, the answer is there's a third thing. It's agency. In other words, you are an agent. Other agents are subjects, and then there are objects, those things that receive the action of agents. So the reality is, if you want to properly understand FI, it has to do with the agent field or the agent frame, okay? The agent frame, the internal metaphysical and internal physical fields. So, in other words, as an agent, within the agency frame, you basically translate information from the internal metaphysical to the internal physical field. But you do it from the perspective of an agent, not as subject or object. And I'm not exactly sure on the mechanics of all that part, because that's the thing I still haven't figured out. I've mentioned a few times to people, like, I need some TI DOM to help me figure this out because it's too complicated. But because there's three frames, there's four fields, and there's information flowing in, I guess, four different ways, basically. I'm still not quite sure how to incorporate TE and FE with the idea of put, get, receive information. Then you've got interface functions, which seem to do basically a put receive cycle that doesn't involve a lot of getting of information. In other words, all the getting is external. That's the main difference between an interface function and a deliberation function. Is the getting is done externally with an interface function. So I need to talk to somebody who's a very robust TI-NE thinker about this to help me out a little bit with it. Of course, Cloud doesn't understand that we can determine the level of success of the thing I'm talking about. That we can actually check it, we can test it and find out how correct it is. Okay, well, so here's the thing. Jung was on the right track about a lot of things. But look at the way he talks about intuition. Intuition is the function. Well, extroverted intuition and introverted intuition are very different things. Introverted intuition ought to be called intuition. That's intuition. Extroverted intuition is not intuition, but it relies heavily on intuition to do its thing. It is not the case that you cannot explain where extroverted intuition comes from. I can trace back all my extroverted intuition and explain it. So Jung's wrong about that because he didn't distinguish between the extroverted and introverted expressions of a function as being different functions, which they really are. So, and you can see that because NE and NI relate differently than do like TI and TE. Why? Because that's correct. He's right about the first and second function, and those things define everything else. So your tool function defines your polar, your dominant defines your fifth and fourth, and then your two defines your 6, 7, and 3. So every definition is going to limit. That's what a definition is. It is a constraint on meaning. It is true that the second function is not an absolute value, as I've indicated. It's an instrumental value. And that's correct when it says does not have importance in its own right. But it's misleading because just because it's an instrumental value doesn't mean it doesn't have importance. Your tool function definitely is extremely significant to you. It's just an instrumental value rather than absolute. Who and why define the behavior of each function's slot? Why do they have different behavior-like roles? It's a good question. Why are they not just differentiated by strength? So the answer is because of the nature of valuings, such as instrumental and absolute, right? So because instrumental values work differently than absolute values in a person's overall calculus, where a function lands in a stack, it naturally is going to be defined it's going to be defined by not strength but amount of time spent consciously or willfully using that function. So for example, I spend most of my time consciously or willfully using extroverted intuition with introverted thinking or extroverted feeling. As a relief function, quote unquote, I attend primarily to introverted sensing rather than having the alternative to it, which is having it serving my extroverted intuition primarily. That's my conscious stack, as they say. Now, my back stack is like the 6 slot function is reactive. It responds to stimuli in the world by producing attention in me by that function to provide for the world what it appears to demand of me. So that's its role, okay? Its role is to be demonstrative. Oh shit, I'm going along in life and I've got a problem that's about which there's no external pressure. In other words, my problem might be poor translation of media making efforts into outcomes, you might say. That would be a problem. Well, I'm never going to really apply TE to that because it's only a problem because the outcome's inconsistent with what I want in theory. So I don't value what I want very highly because it's polar to me, which means I'm never paying attention via that modality. And as a consequence, whenever I'm using extroverted thinking, it's for the external world. It's demonstrative. And it's reactive or responsive to the need the external world places on me to do something. So is it strong or weak? Well, it's not that's an incorrect way to look at it. It's instead it fulfills its role in my ontology. Everybody needs to have a part of themselves that's the default way in which we try to provide for, we try to meet the demands the world has of us. Sixth slot TI is basically saying if the world's demanding something of us, then it's probably demanding of us that we need to be consistent and justify things. Unconscious is a bad word for it. It is demonstrative, and at the same time, it's informed a lot by your dominant function. So let's say SE is your dominant function and FE is your sixth slot. Well, then your display of FE for the world is going to be influenced a lot by your dominant function, which means you're going to put a lot of information. You're going to put a lot of FE information. You're not going to get a lot of FE information. You're not going to receive a lot of FE information. You're going to put a lot of FE information. For me, it's my sixth slot function TE is it demonstrates under extroverted intuition, which means TE naturally is not trial and error. It's ordinally mindful, whereas my TE tends to be more trial and error. So that means it's not a very good demonstrative function, really, but it often takes me a few times to solve a problem, whatever it is with my TE. The first time I do it, I would do it wrong, and I have to try again. But I'm willing to try again, and I'm accustomed to this sort of thing. So for me, demonstrative TE is an intentional manner that I never really do right. And I don't know if that's true of everybody's sixth slot function or not. The thing about my sixth slot, of course, is it differs from other people's sixth slot in terms of its relationship to your dominant and second. So I go metaphysical in the dominant and second, and then physical in the sixth, and then metaphysical in the third. So my sixth is really contrary to my basic leanings ontologically. How does sixth slot NE behave? Well, it's again going to be framed somewhat by the dominant, which is going to be either TE or FE. So that means if you're a TE dom, you're using your sixth slot NE demonstratively in concert with solving some problem or attaining some goal. If it's FE in the dominant slot, it means you're using your NE in concert with managing social stuff, maybe making jokes, performing things, being ENFJ, you know? So that's what I mean by that. I would not call it unconscious. I would say the sixth slot function is automatic. It's relatively automatic. In other words, when Rachel mentions some sort of problem, I immediately try to solve it. And that's because probably, I guess, I see FI as a problem that needs to be resolved. You saw my Excel tables? I'm not sure what Excel tables you're talking about. So, like, because I go metaphysical, and then I have physical in the sixth slot, I'm quite contrary to my 6-slot demonstrative function, and it's going to be comparatively weak, but the better word would be it's incompatible with my nature. It's fundamentally incompatible with my nature. Whereas, I mean, look, I'm in the process of making new document that articulates things a little bit more precisely, Cloud, and correctly, because that's an old document. If you're talking about the exciting tables, it's not in Excel, but I don't use that. I don't use the self-tribe dichotomy. You're not talking about my shit. I don't know who you're talking about. You're talking about DSP? So the thing is, like if you look at INTP, they go metaphysical in their first slot, metaphysical in their second slot, physical in their third slot. So they differ from the ENTP in that fashion. And the sixth slot function, NI, is metaphysical. So it's consistent with their nature. Your basic nature is defined by your first and second slot. So INTPs are meta-analysts, like ENTPs and INFJs, and to a lesser extent, ENFJs. Yeah. Regardless, Cloud, if I was critiquing the self-tribe thing, I was critiquing the idea of it. I wasn't utilizing it. I've never used it. So yeah, it's that whether or not your 6-slot function is consistent with your dominant and your second is going to be indicative of how friendly you are with it. In other words, the demonstrated NI of an INTP is a lot better than the demonstrated TE of an ENTP. And that's going to have something to do with extroversion and introversion as well. Which says that because I've got, the interface function that I have in the third is going to be demonstrative also. In other words, I'm using FE and demonstrating that all the time, but it's willfully so. Yeah, INFJs work weird because they are, INFJs go metaphysical, metaphysical, metaphysical. They go NI, FE, TI. But in the second slot, FE, they have demonstrative FI. It's definitely countervalued. So it's like TE and FI are countervalued in the ENTP and INFJ, respectively, more than NI and NE are in the INTP and ENFJ, respectively. Who called you weird? What is an interface function? Well, an interface function is a kind of, it's a way of interacting with dynamic systems. So there are two kinds of systems, dynamic and static. Static systems include things like the written word, where if Joe says a bunch of things, that record of what he said is static. It doesn't change, and you can reference it and respond to it accordingly. You can quote the person, etc. So if you're arguing back and forth in writing, let's say, then you're using an action deliberation modality. You don't need to interface in that instance. You can make all your decisions, deliberate, and then act. But on the other hand, if I'm trying to butter up some person in power in order to get some decision made for me on my behalf, then I'm I need to read the person in real time and see how I'm doing. I need to get a sense of what that person's wants are and what makes them feel juiced and satisfied. And I need to provide that to them. I need to give them certain amounts and kinds of praise, and intuitively read their level of intuition. How much are they thinking? How much are they aware that I'm buttering them up? And I need to adjust accordingly in real time. It's a turn-based thing. In other words, when you're interfacing with somebody, you're using language mostly, and that language is going to be turn-based because that's what language is. But you're also incorporating real-time cues like body language, facial expressions, etc. So the interface functions are those that are designed to interface. In other words, are responsive in real time to the indications of a dynamic system for which you cannot in advance plan everything and then act. You can't deliberate it all out and then act. So it's the difference between something like let's see. What's very okay? It's the difference between something very predictable, like the decay of a radioactive atom, and something unpredictable, like weather. One is a reducible system or a closed system, and the other is an irreducible system or a chaotic system, open system. So the thing is, human beings need a way to interface with open systems that constrain the amount of data somewhat in ways that make it conceivable to interface with them. That's what interface functions do. Now, I would like to have a better understanding of how that links to the put, get, receive information idea, and explain it somehow in those two terms or another term. I need some help, basically. And I need to have some help with like one-on-one talking to somebody who's a TI-NE user. Would I agree that I'm a performer and need an audience to bounce back off of? I think I'm most comfortable performing like this, but I can certainly behave more as an action, like a deliberated action type. Like I can write things and produce documents, no problem. And in that instance, it's I'm more like a deliberator actor and less like an actor deliberator. But for example, when ESTP enters a bar, he will use SE with FE to be the jocks that interface in the system to reach their goals. Right, which means, he'll use SE and TI. How TI works in terms of real-time expression is something that I also don't have a really clear understanding of. But the FE absolutely is framing the use of the TI. So it's like the SETI user is likely to say something slightly shocking to some buddy that he wants to pick up on. Understanding the way that just action disrupts the other person's equilibrium and gives you an advantage. And then your FE fills in the gap to make it work to your advantage. You hate performing, it bothers you to be the center of attention, but you can do it. I love performing. I love being the center of attention. But I certainly can do stuff where I'm more like my TI-NE counterparts as well. Well, the put, get, receive idea is that, look, think about the internet. I can enter data into a field, right? In like a form. That's putting information. Or I can Google something. That's getting information. Or I can click my link and then the thing that I want come to me. That's receiving information. Now, the interface functions then need to have some kind of either put, get, receive matrix or some other kind of relationship with information. I mean, look, if you're getting information, no, listen to me. What I'm saying about TI and FI is note that the get idea for TI and FI is something that is not going to resonate intuitively as what happens with your cognitive functions. It's not going to feel like you're getting information. It's going to feel like you're deliberating upon information that you've gotten. But we know TI and FI are information getters because when you're using them properly, you certainly begin with asking questions. So when I want to use TI to dismantle somebody's position or argument, I begin by asking questions and I get them to say things. If you're FI, you ask questions so you know how you feel. In other words, where were you last night? Where did you go? What were you doing? Who's that on your phone? Those are all FI questions. No. Because meta-analysts get along well with other meta-analysts, so ENTP, INTP is not a bad potential relationship. ENTP, INFJ, ENTP, ENFJ are all potentially good relationships because it's meta-analyst, meta-analyst. That's the thing is everybody else wants to concretize in some way. They're like, yeah, but what's the point of this? What are you either like, what are we directing this towards in terms of how are we rendering this useful to a specific thing? That would be like an analyst. Or what's the specific thing that we are doing this in response to? That would be like a executive. Or what's the specific thing that we're supposed to do because of this? That would be an executor. And it's best for people to be the same thing there, I think, because it represents a fundamental frame on life. Are we deciding things for any purpose or not? And the answer for meta-analysts is no. The analysis is the purpose in and of itself. It's a value in and of itself, and thus it doesn't need to be applied to anything in particular. Now, ENFJ is much less a meta-analyst. We'd probably be well suited to put to take them out of the meta-analyst group. Maybe even put INTJ in there, although they are fundamentally analysts. They keep wanting to apply their information to things. They keep wanting to TE things, That's one possibility, or there's some other, there's some other information directionality that I haven't figured out yet or something. I don't have everything all figured out. There's specific areas where I'm kind of stuck. Operationalizing the interface term in the way that I've operationalized. To say that I've operationalized the action term and the knowledge term and the deliberation term means that I can represent it in more basic terms within the overall mechanics of the model, you know? So, I'm trying to think like there are handshake things, translation things in in the internet that maybe are relevant or equivalent. I'm not sure. But I would say that what FE would seem to do is attend in a way that takes into account both real time and turn based information to to know that then it knows what the other person's basic state of perception and you know self-evaluation in relation to other people's evaluation. um, that basic thing there is rendered into a approximate symbol that we can work with. So in other words, it's rendered into a static object from a dynamic reality. And then once it's in that static object, then we know about that static object, or we know, or knowledge is the creation of that static object, and then that informs our next action, which is so like if I go up to somebody and go, "Hi, my name's Eric, and I'm having this problem here," and I'm talking to some bigwig or whatever, then I'm immediately going to be reading both body language um, and hearing what the person says. If I see them go, oh, now is not the time. I'll just say, okay, when can I come back? Blah blah blah, because I'll read the fact that my TI defensibility needs to be defensible on FE grounds later, which is to say, the person asked me to wait a second, and I need to be able to reference that I respected that and displayed the proper social dynamic system response. It plays in with the TI that I'm going to use later. In other words, I'll reference things that I said or did or they did or said in justifying myself. So the FE then is that awareness of not just the argumentation that I can deliberate out ahead of time and then use as an action function, but also the elements of the system that I can't deliberate out ahead of time. I can't know ahead of time whether the person's going to be in a good mood or a bad mood, whether they're going to, or what they're going to say exactly. Because when I go to contact them and interface with them the first time, I'm having to deal with an actual person rather than just this thing that's going to respond to my words. So that's what an interface function does, right? It's like it goes in there. I've deliberated out my words to the extent that I can, and I've come up with some TI sort of justifications, TI style arguments and stuff that I might end up using or not. But then I go in and I interface with the person, and I'm impacted by my FE understanding of things, not just my TI understanding of things. Now, note that extroverted intuition itself is a very interfacey kind of action function. In other words, I'm comfortable treating the deliberation action process as though it were an interface process, which is to say, when I go in and talk to somebody, I'm confident that even though I'm not making decisions in the conditional time realm, that I'm faster enough than everybody else that I'll always make the correct decision in real time. In that regard, my extroverted intuition, it facilitates the interface quality of dealing with people, because not only am I able to interface adequately, although not super well, with my extroverted feeling, I'm able to action deliberate. I can use action deliberate in an interface capacity because I'm so fast with it. How do I see myself in 10 years? What will you accomplish in the realm of psychology? Well, I will certainly have finished this new book document thing I'm working on right now. It makes me kind of want to start looking at it again right this second, actually. And hopefully it'll be the definitive work on this. I want to talk to Hambone and or Horse Mumbler about this a little bit and try to figure out what's going on with how to really make this modelable so that we could simulate it. And because if you have a proper sim, all the various dynamics you put into the system will produce behaviors of simulated human beings that's consistent with those of actual human beings. So you create a simulated human being with the cognitive function stack that operates in accordance with the mechanics that are laid out in the system, and then simulate the operation of that simulated individual within a simulated world that has all four fields represented, and et cetera, and see if in fact the human behaves like what we correlate with type behaviors, and or if in fact it breaks, like, well, with that set of variables, this simulated human just ends up sitting in one place all the time, getting depressed and then dying, or something like that. Then we know that we failed to adequately set up the mechanics of. There must be a bug in the system somewhere, because that's not what simulated human should look like it's doing, right? Do I think my knowledge is valuable to all people or only NTPs? I am well aware of the way in which argumentation trickles down. So the correct position on things is understood first by NTPs and some NTJs in debate, actually, in like high school debate. And what happens is it starts in college debate. There starts to be a trend in college debate, and then high school debate parses it out properly. So college debate is very ideological, super leftist, right? And then high school debate gets informed by college debate, and they start making the same kind of arguments, like identity politics arguments. But in high school debate, you've got a diverse judge pool, and so bad arguments don't end up sustaining over time. So identity politics is basically dead in high school now because it doesn't win. Why? Because it's wrong. You can't sustain it. It's unsustainable. So the thing is, what I note is that the correctness of given positions trickles down slowly to the general populace from the rhetoricians. It does require translators. That's true, Cloud. Maybe you're one of those translators. Maybe you'll turn out to be, when you decide to put away your adversarial quality for a little bit, maybe you'll turn out to be the person who can successfully translate the truth of what I'm saying to people who don't normally operate under those terms. So it's important that I be actually correct, which means I'm going to have to be what you would consider to be overthinking, too much TI, too mechanical, not nuanced enough, but all those other critiques you have. I'm going to have to be all of those things to be correct. But once I'm correct, I'm going to need others to help me translate that for people like people who don't, this isn't their native domain of thinking, right? It's like their strength lies elsewhere. It's not in trying to parse shit out. Right, but see, Cloud, I'm doing my thing, and your thing is to come here and tell me what's wrong with my thing. So I actually don't particularly need
this critique to refine what it is that I think is important or why I'm doing it, you might want to ask yourself, why is what's most important to me, Cloud, busting Eric's chops? That seems to be my most important thing in life, because every time Eric's around, I seem to drop what I'm doing to come bust his chops. So why is it that I'm constantly doing this? You know, in order for my opinion to be valuable, I can't rely on others. Fortunately, Cloud, that's not what I rely upon for my opinion to be valuable. I rely upon it being more true than all alternative opinions cover in the same area of conversation or topic of topic of analysis, subject of analysis. So, and then whether or not others can do with it as they please, it's not my problem. I'm not worried about what happens to the truth once it escapes my mouth. I'm pleased that it's the truth, and I know it will survive on its own merits. And that's the truth, Cloud. I mean, you're here for a reason. It's not because I'm wrong all the time. It's because I'm right all the time. And you're sort of testing your own argumentative impulses here. You're pushing, I guess, basically a relativist framework that everything's mush, and that any attempt to organize or define it meaningfully is doomed to fail, because it's just it's not the thing in itself. It's map work. But I mean, it's naturally, Cloud. Map is a pro map framework that, like, I have, and there's a pro territory framework like you have. The problem that you have here in coming here and arguing this shit is this is map town. We're talking about map stuff here. That's what cognitive functions are. They're map things. The fact that they're map things and not territory things does not make them worthless, meaningless, less real, or all these other shit you say. It just makes it different than your preference. It makes it the other preference. So it's certainly possible, Cloud, that because of who I am, there's a limited set of people who will like and appreciate me. That's true. I don't doubt that, But I don't understand why most universally being liked is always better. So, like, it's valued. Okay, well, same thing. The person who's valued by the broadest swath of people in the world is not necessarily inherently more valuable because he's more broadly valued, right? Because some things are like, you're here enough, Cloud, that it's fair to say you value this a lot. Otherwise you wouldn't be here all the time. But there's only 10 people here. So are you wrong to value this so much? I don't have Excel tables. But do you understand what I'm asking you, Cloud? Are you wrong to value this so much? You clearly do value it so much, or you wouldn't be here all the time. Is that wrong of you? Because I'm talking about TI stuff? Or is there room in your life for somebody who views things by a different modality than you, and that you understand there's value in participating accordingly? Okay, well, I think the reason is because I engage with you so much. Your SE finds purchase here. You're saying things that are designed to kick up dust, to provoke responses and stuff. And so it doesn't really matter to you what my responses are, as long as I'm responding to you and engaging with you directly. It's very gratifying to you because you're SE FI, you want some kind of response, you get some kind of response, It's great. But You're not actually really trying to figure anything out according to the metrics that I think of as being figuring things out. You're trying to figure things out according to your own metric, and that's fine. I'm not trying to say that's wrong, but you do like to think that I'm wrong all the time. Okay, well, for whatever reason, I don't know why you want it. That's fine. You want to learn things, or you want to challenge me, or you want to challenge yourself to see how well you can argue, or whatever reasons you want to explore things, that's fine too. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to reduce your motivations like that. My bad. And you know, I consistently have fun when you're around and I'm engaging with you during these streams, Cloud, because you give me plenty of things to respond to, plenty of little provocations, and I don't think that's not my community, Cloud. You're being disingenuous when you describe this community like that. I get pushback from lots of people. I just don't get constant pushback from anybody but you. You know, I get an argument about. There's a lot of people who will agree with you about evolution and disagree with me. Winston's mom, for example, agrees with you about evolution, not me. My dad says we ruined Peter's sex life by beating him. He's always coming around here chasing food instead of chasing chicks. So my dad's convinced that we ruined his sex life. Oh, I don't want to get into the evolution argument right now. But my basic position is that a species is a self-replicating genome, and as a consequence, is not subject to evolution in any meaningful sense. But that evolution doesn't explain the origin of the species, basically. But regardless, that doesn't mean I'm a creationist. It just means I don't think that evolution explains anything. I mean, the thing is, yeah, my TI is sound. So for TI users, we judge things on a universal metric. So whether or not somebody pushes back is whether or not they can find an angle to push back on that's legit. Whereas you just push back randomly on all kinds of shit, you know? You're trying to dissemble or reduce to relativism. You collapse the skep, as we call it in debate. But certainly there's plenty of disagreement. I get in arguments with people all the time, Cloud. I mean, you got to be real about that. I get in arguments with lots of people about lots of different things. No, you can't, MT. All you got to do if you want to prove evolution with fruit flies, and you're right, that's a good species to use, is change them into something that's not a fruit fly. Remember, genomes have adaptability within them. In other words, it is the case that species can adapt to some environmental changes within the range of the genome. We see that range adaptability maximized in dogs. Now, show me an example where we've turned that species into a different species, though, despite having pushed on that vector as hard as you possibly can. If we ever create speciation? No, because definitionally a species is a self-replicating genome. And for a lot of other reasons. Okay, well, MT, the fact is you don't even know what evolution is all about. If you haven't studied it nearly as much as I have to argue against it. I don't want to get into evolution right now, okay? If you think you understand how evolution explains the origin of the species, then explain punctuated equilibrium to me. And explain how the nearly neutral theory, despite the genetic drift barrier, no, but MT, listen to me. There is no doubt that we can adapt given species within the range of their genome without being able to speciate them. Look at all kinds of different species of plants that we've bred, all kinds of different species of animals we've bred. They always remain the same species, no matter how far we push that breeding program. And that's the truth, okay? That's just how it is. And if we were to let all the dogs loose, they would revert to the mean. Why? Because negative selection naturally does that. It preserves the genome in its native state, okay? So you're absolutely wrong. You don't understand what you're talking about even. You probably think that species evolved slowly over 4 billion years or some bullshit like that. It's not what the evolutionists think now. explain punctuated equilibrium, explain how the nearly neutral theory has caused speciation despite the fact that there's an acknowledgement of a genetic drift barrier of around 100 individuals in a species. Explain all that to me if you want to begin to have a meaningful conversation about it, because I am deeply researched about it at this point, and most everybody who comes in here and tries to argue with me has no idea what they're talking about. Able to produce reproductively viable offspring after mating. That's the definition of the same species. You honestly don't know what you're talking about, MT, I can tell you for sure. I've argued with lots and lots of people about this, and I've never gotten any answers to any of my questions. Nobody has any answers. If evolution is a theory that we ought to put any credence in at all, name one prediction it makes that's not falsified. All sorts of things. I've researched the shit out of it, you know? Start at Wikipedia like anybody else and follow some links. I've been responsive to all the different arguments people have made. I've learned things as I've argued against it. People go, well, what about this? And then I look it up and see, you know? So I've heard just about every argument you can be made about it. Bruce Moose made a new point the other day that I hadn't heard before that I looked at, but that didn't explain anything. Because that's not the point. We don't operate like that. The world doesn't operate like that, Cloud. There are times when we acknowledge that we don't have an explanation yet for something, because we don't. That doesn't mean there's not an explanation, and it doesn't mean that it must be one of the existing wrong explanations, for God's sake. It's not one of the existing wrong explanations. We know that. Is there an explanation? Yeah, there probably is an explanation. Do we have the explanation for that yet? No, email Anthrax, for God's sakes. First of all, even if it were Wikipedia, who cares? This is basic biological science, evolutionary science information. But regardless, I follow a bunch of links. I research in a bunch of different ways. And I read articles about it all the time, depending from various sources. Why would you even bother questioning that of all things? If you doubt my research, then find some counter research, right? It's like I'm winning all these points because nobody else does any research, and you're critiquing which kind of research I'm doing. Are put, get, receive proportional to each other? So the more you put, the more you receive? No. Put, get, receive would be proportional to where it is in the stack. So I'm mostly an action type. I do more putting of information. Mostly I do put information that's been deliberated out, but either in real time or beforehand, or references things that I recall deliberating previously by my SI. I also put information through the frame of FE, which is I want to be likable in general, and I don't want to be too much of a dick when telling people they're wrong and stuff like that, you know? So I'm mostly putting information, but or in other words, my frame is putting information. The information I put is filtered through these two filters, TI and FE. That is to say, I make sure what I'm saying is consistent with what I've said before and consistent with my other ideas that I maintain as part of a general model or map. I make sure my map is tidy. And then to the extent that I'm dealing with non-map things, well, I'm dealing with other people's actual perceptions of me. So that's on FE. I deal with it in an interface way. I try to remember certain heuristics that I can use to attain more legitimacy via FE, and just generally become more practiced at being cool and not being a dick and stuff. And there you go. Now, in the last function, I receive information, which means basically what I know is always in service, or almost always in service, of what information I'm putting out there. And it's always in service. It's always there to be referenced with my TI for consistency. And my memories are there to be referenced with my FE to give me more information about what heuristics to use in interfacing with people. It's in service to the rest of the stack, but it's also a relief function, which means when I need to change from my default modality of put information that's been deliberated and processed through an FE frame, then I retreat to SI first, as though I attend to introverted sensing, and to the extent that I have extroverted intuition, it's dominated by that. Like maybe this water in this bath needs to be a little hotter. Is extroverted intuition that's driven by introverted sensing. When I'm retreating to my introverted sensing and going rah and taking care of myself and taking baths and sleeping and stuff, then I'm in my relief function at that point. No, Claude, I mean, the thing is, my NE cannot be responsible for producing an explanation that doesn't exist yet in order to, as a precondition to dismiss the existing explanation. It's a fallacy called damning the alternatives. Well, this one must be wrong, so the other one must be right. Would the interface functions have a significant time dependence as opposed to deliberation functions? Well, no. It's because, look, my understanding of FE and TE both is that the thing you're working on, the system you're working on, mostly remains, at least in your head, remains the same while you're absent from it. When you return to it, it is available for you to work on it again. In reality, both things may suffer from real-time decay. In other words, if I don't talk to a person in enough time connection that I did before, let's say I set up something I needed to get accomplished by making a good FE introduction, and then I didn't follow through soon enough, then my FE introduction would become kind of a, instead of an asset, would become a burden, because it would still be there, but now there'd be this additional information that I inexplicably took a long ass time to follow up on it or something. But the assumption is when we send that FE intro thing that we've got a window of time that's in which any instance of us following up is essentially equal. Like we're planning to follow up in about 2 days, then that's what's going to happen. You know, it's like if we do follow up in about 2 days, whether it's a day and a half or 2.5 days, it doesn't matter really. It's going to have the same FE impact. But if we wait a week and a half, then it won't, right? TE is the same thing. If I have to stop work on a project that, like fixing a doorknob tonight and I return to it tomorrow, no big deal. But if I leave it like that for a week and a half and come back to it, well, then by that time it would be used by various people and it'll be all dismantled and have to start all over again, right? So that's the way that interface functions have a less significant time dependence than say action functions, I guess. Like I have to finish this sentence, right? I can't just leave it for an hour and then come back to it. So in that sense, an action function is a lot more time dependent and it's much more real time necessary, whether it's working on this turn-based modality like I am or real-time modality. In soccer, it's very time dependent. I have to run over and kick the ball right now. I can't just stand there indefinitely, decide what to do, and then go kick the ball. I expect the ball will still be in the same place, right? The action I'm taking is talking, Cloud, ideation, putting out idea objects on the external metaphysical field so that everybody can examine them, critique them on their own independently with their TI, presumably. But it's also subject to critique with TE. In other words, well, why is what you're doing useful, Eric? Or how is it useful? How can I use this? If it has no utility, it has no worth. That's a TE kind of a frame. It's also critiquable on an intuitive level. Like this intuitively resonates or doesn't resonate as accounting for synergistic elements. It's critiquable, I guess, on an FI level if you have some attachment to a counter another approach to cognitive functions this contradicts, then you might be opposed to this. You might be attached to this because it's one you like me better than the other people, and so even if they're right, you'll stick with me or something. That would be an FI kind of evaluation of it. It's not about utility. So in other words, I'm taking action by talking and putting word objects out on the external metaphysical field. And you're saying, how is that action? Well, I just explained to you. Inaction would be thinking it in my head and not saying it out loud, right? So what you're then saying is, why are you, instead of talking, why aren't you doing things instead of talking? Because it's like, I guess, do you get that those things are exclusive of one another in some sense? That if I'm always out doing things, then I'm not always talking. But extroverted intuition is an ideational action function. It's not a executional action function. I do lots of things in the real world, Cloud. Remember, I have a career in life outside of this YouTube channel. For example, I've coached national champions before. I was the director of what grew to be from nothing to the biggest middle school debate program in the country. I opened debate schools in Shanghai and Taipei. So why would you say I never did anything in the real world? Well, because I'm an ENTP, and that's the kind of action I most like taking. Playing the guitar is another form of action I like to take. Certainly if in fact my talking for hours is useless and somehow to be dismissed, to be condemned in some fashion, then certainly your listening to me talk for hours is equally contemptible, right? I mean, well, so why are you not saying that about me? It's like, why are you not saying that I qualify as somebody who's done things? I mean, like I said, Cloud, if in fact this is such a waste of time, then surely your participating in it is such a waste of time. But it apparently is something you value, and it's something I like to do. So I don't understand why you keep insisting that it's. But what's wrong with that? Why should I have a problem with that? This is my default nature, you know? Well, I'm doing my thing. So what's wrong with that? God, why is your thing okay and my thing is not okay? Yeah, you do. You say, because you're capable of being in the inertia for 5 hours and you have no problem with that. Why should I have a problem with that? Why should I have a problem? Am I hurting myself in some way? Do I seem incapable of making my own decisions? Is it not perfectly acceptable for me to do what I want here? Okay. Well, the thing is, what I try to tell you, Cloud, is remember, I've done that life where I've been a successful person, been highly successful at my career, really stood out. I've been able to walk onto debate tournaments with a big ass team with a lot of swagger, and people go, shit, Kudos is here. Back when I was director of Kudos. And we were like, Cobra Kai. We were the evil empire. We'd go and fucking demolish the competition. We we got those sweeps awards at nationals like 5 years in a row, which are very difficult to get even one year, even one of them. We got multiple for like 5 years in a row. So the thing is, at a certain point, accomplishment like that becomes hollow. I always liked coaching. I always liked it. Always was meaningful to me to see kids win because it meant a lot to them, you know. And as a consequence, it necessarily is going to mean a lot to me. Also, I'm very competitive, and I'd always end up having some sort of imagined beef with some other coach that pissed me off, and I wanted to crush them. And I'd tell the kids, you know, fuck these people, fuck those team right there. You go in and you demolish those fuckers, you know, like. I always had something like that going on because I used to be more combative, I guess. And I still like that with debate. I really wanted Jeffrey to be able to go to TOC this year and win that fucking thing. We were prepped to win that thing, I tell you. But you know, Cloud, it's not that you're wrong entirely. I would be happier in some sense if I were to just execute shit as probably I know I should, and be a little less self-indulgent and have more of a plan, be more TE about my own life. And even though I've got great TE when it comes to demonstrating it for the world in things that I tend to demonstrate it in, which is to say, not everything, but some kinds of things. I would probably be happier if I took a more mindful approach towards my YouTube stuff, executed some kind of a plan that both allowed myself flexibility to be me and also did a better job of maximizing outcome. But of course, YouTube is very tricky. I'm stuck in a spot where I don't have an NI directionality here. It's like, I'm not clear whether YouTube's still suppressing this channel or not. I'm not clear whether I have an opportunity to compete fairly with the channel or not. And of course, obviously I don't want to toss aside almost 6,000 subscriber foundation just because if in fact my fears are outmoded or something. Like, he is like, why don't we do this? And he actually wants to do it, and he does it. But he has TE, so it's easier for him. Well, I mean, I do too. There's lots of things I say, why don't we do this? And I do. And there's lots of things I say, why don't we do this? And we don't do. For example, I said to Rachel, why don't we do a video on Richard Dawson? And we'll both narrate it together. And we did. And I completed it. And I uploaded it. And hopefully it'll do well. Will it do well? Actually, I don't know. My hope is that it'll get caught up in the search algorithms and it'll be a one-off independent benefit for myself. I'd like to make another one of those kind of videos. Maybe I will today. I think those have potential to be sort of long legs earners for me at a small level. If I could produce a bunch of them, they could produce long-term earnings, you know, that would be good. So no, TE is not follow through. TE is taking action in the frame of attaining a goal or solving a problem. So, for example, when I did the Richard Dawkins video, that was good TE because I thought to myself, what's a way that I can attain an outcome or solve a problem that doesn't commit me to a long-term course of action that can do work for me once I've done it forevermore without me having to look back in on it, so to speak. Well, that's good TE. In other words, it's accounting for the realities of the context, namely me and my inclinations to not be tied down to any plan. I do know, Jack, from World Socionic Society, you were typed as an introverted, intuitive, logical extrovert. That's ENTP, right? Well, Jackson ENTP, he knows what he's doing in general. Of course, he's doing all of this shit based on the wrong system. Socionics is wrong, and it's wrong for a number of reasons that I've articulated before, and I can articulate again at some point, but I don't feel like right now. So but it's righter than the other wrong systems, except it's not as right as me. And I've invited Jack to come debate me about socioeconomics plenty of times, and he just has not followed up on that. So the thing about that being good to E, Bacon, is one of the reasons why it was good to E is it required no SE of me. It respected the fact that I'm not very good at willfully applying extroverted sensing, following through on a single plan over time. You are very uncommon, R. Claire. That is true. Do you want me to type you? I'll type you for free right now if you want. I'd be curious to meet you too. If you want, if you're willing to put a video up. King Christus I want to see another female ENTP. I only know one I can think of, Becky. Any is the satisfaction. No, you're wrong. Any is not the satisfaction. That is not what a function is. Extroverted intuition is an intentional process or an intentional manner that generates ideas. But I would say as a value, NE values novelty and SE values impact or change as a thing. Do you have a guess why ENTP females are rare? ENTPs in general are rare. They're rarer than people think. The amount of people who type themselves as the ENTP vastly outnumbers the amount of actual ENTPs there. And I don't know why ENTPs in general are rare, nor do I know why female ENTPs are more rare than male ENTPs, but male ENTPs are quite rare as well. I know of a couple others, but that's really it. Yeah, Becky, Planet Ketchup. She wasn't annoying about whatever. She was wicked across the board in ways that are unacceptable. She's still wicked. It's like, regardless, not all ENTPs have character. And it's important for ENTPs to develop character and accountability and to use their objectivity about themselves and to be fair in critiquing themselves. The thing is, ENTPs have too much of an advantage rhetorically in general if we're not independently committed to honesty and the truth, then we become shysters and spinmeisters. I don't know what Becky wants. I mean, she wants to hurt me. That's what she wants. Because I held her accountable, and she has accountability avoidance syndrome. That's why. And she can't stand it. She's probably projecting somebody else onto me. Winston's mom indicated that was a possibility with some of these spite monkeys before, and yeah, I know I have a lot of enemies, a lot of haters. A lot of people seem to project on me somebody in their own life that they can't stand, and they then get spiteful about me. I'm not sure why that's the case, but it's always been the case that I've incited a certain amount of hatred from people. It's sort of irrational, gut level hatred right off the bat before I even have done anything. I remember it from when I was a kid, even. Okay, well, Cloud says, I think people see you as a cult leader because you were always pushing your narrative and setting friends. And you have many fans that listen to that, but there are those who see through it or get irritated. But see, listen, Cloud, that doesn't make a cult leader. It matters which narratives you're pushing and which frames you're setting. So I'm setting totally fair frames. I'm setting a frame of fair discourse. That's the frame that's being set here. Fair and reasonable discourse and civil society in a nutshell, basically. And the narratives I'm pushing are that explanation X is preferable to explanation Y, things like that. I'm encouraging others to respond as equal participants in that critique. In other words, I subject myself to public critique. I do not tell people what to do. I'm not trying to take advantage of anybody or exploit anybody. I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. I did get bullied some, but I bullied some myself too, and those are my worst memories, are the ones where I've been wicked. When I'm wicked, I remember it a long time, and it hurts my heart. But they aren't as fancy as you guys got in there. We like it here with T. I feel the same way in regards to TE, Anthrax. TI makes people feel stupid, and when you tell them the truth, they feel like they have been talked down to. Well, I mean, it's true that TI DOMs tend to present pedantically, and TI tool users like me can as well, certainly. But because FE is my ultimately my absolute value, which is to say, I want to be perceived well and liked. And if something makes me a pariah or widely disliked, I will kick that thing. I won't stay attached to it, because ultimately it'll violate my absolute value. So I am determined to manage the FE as well as I can. Is it healthy to continue my relationship with Rachel? Absolutely. Is it toxic? No, it's absolutely not toxic at all. It's the only totally non-toxic relationship I've ever been in. Now, it is the case, Cloud, that my girlfriend has a mental illness that has recently caused her to have an episode or a storm of basically Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing. But the good news is that can and has been stabilized with medication, and I can anticipate that I'll get the true Rachel for quite a long time now before we have any other additional problems. Well, Claire, when you say, but if you think about it, if you were wrong, you're just plain wrong. Why do people not accept that? Why does it matter how people call you out on your wrongness? That's a very FI polar understanding of the world. You and I have the same understanding that I don't want to cling to my wrongness. So when others point it out, I do my best to be objective in figuring out which aspects of their critique are legit so I can adjust accordingly. And if their critique's not legit, then I critique them in return. I say, okay, well, this is not a legitimate critique. And so now you're subject to critique for making an illegitimate critique. Of course, some people are convinced I'm wrong about things, but can't convince me I'm wrong. And what that means is basically they don't have any reason to believe that they're right, but they insist they are anyway. If they had a good reason to believe they're right, I would adopt their position and jettison my own, because I don't have much attachment to any given position. I don't see my positions as being part of my identity. That's a function of TI tool function and FI polar. We just don't ever attend via our attachments. We don't use an interested calculus. And in fact, when we're asked to, it's confusing to us. I remember even as a little kid being asked in like kindergarten, what's your favorite meow? What's your favorite meow? I didn't really get the question. What do you mean? How do you have a favorite meow? What does that mean? It depends entirely on, I don't even know. What kind of question is that? And the other thing is,
our Claire, is that you're likely to get into a series of bad relationships. You're not going to choose your people well. By Ken Kinkers and Summer Pagoo. So an attack on source material is not a legitimate argument in a debate. Well, it depends how the source material is being used. If something's being cited for like concrete data, and the argument is based on that concrete data, and you say that source material is not a legitimate source of data, then that's fine. You're doing a source critique saying this is a bad study with poor methodology or something like that, then that's fine. But if in fact you're saying well, you're wrong because you drew your ideas from this wrong thing, well, that's not going to work, because if your ideas differentiate from the wrong thing, you may have fixed what's wrong about it. If, in fact, you're trying to say, I'm right because the source material is right, and I can't explain why I'm right, but I'm telling you, you look at the source material yourself, you're just asking me to do your work. You should understand why it is you believe a thing. And it shouldn't be because Joe says it. It should be because Joe said this, and as a consequence, I've come to understand this as well, and this is what my articulation of it is. Because if you can't make the argument yourself, then you have no reason to believe it. You're just having faith in Joe. A teacher asked my favorite colors, and I put 2 random colors down. They ended up making me a scarf with those colors. It didn't look good together at all. They should have asked you, which 2 colors would you like on a scarf, right? Yeah, so Art Claire, here's the thing. Do I also have problems understanding how people use their words? Well, yeah, or in other words, we have problems understanding why people don't use words properly. They say things, this is something that people other than ENTPs seem to say and understand what it means. They go, well, I said blah, 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 but I didn't mean that. Well, it's like, from my perspective, you don't mean things. Your words mean things, and your words mean what they mean. So how could you possibly have meant something other than what the words mean that you said? Well, the answer to that is they're talking about introverted feeling. In other words, if you're an introverted feeler and you're used to using an interested calculus on everything, then you're dealing with the nuanced and irreducible moisture of the soul. How much you like or don't like something versus how much you like or don't like something else, and the competing logics of that, So when you're trying to say, well, I didn't mean that, what you're saying is, stop trying to limit my experience into symbolic meanings, because my experience is endlessly nuanced. So no matter what you say, it's not going to represent it adequately. How can you even answer that? Right. Okay. If you can't use words, if you can't mean what you say, then how can we have a conversation? If you're always going to mean something other than what you say, why don't you just say what you mean then, instead of meaning something else? It's hard to explain. Okay, so in other words, you're not talking about it. You don't know what you want to say to me. You're just mulling around in the mush. You're just being FI fussy, It's crazy. And of course, Art Claire, you're going to encounter some people who are too SI, or some people who are too NI, and those things are going to be frustrating as well. In other words, you're going to encounter some people who are too attached to their own personal experience and ignoring the larger truth that's more relevant. And you're going to go, but here's the larger truth. And then you're going to encounter some people who are obsessed with the larger truth and ignoring the personal experience that's more relevant. And you go, but here are the particulars that are determinant in this factor. And that's going to frustrate the fuck out of you. I would say, Art Claire, you need an INFJ, but INTP is a good choice as well. Does Rachel say what she means and mean what she says? Yes, she does. she absolutely means what she says and says what she means. I've never heard her say anything of the sort like, I didn't mean that. I said that, but I didn't mean it. She's, in fact, even more so than me because of her non-native tendency to spin. She's stuck with every word she ever utters. It's you literally never say anything aside. I don't get it. Why? Just why? Because it's ignoring. She never contradicts herself. Well, like during this last episode, she went back on stuff she said before about being on the same page with me about what commitment means and stuff, and how it means we'd fight it out for a long time before we just break up. But she was crazy, you know. I mean, she was in a fugue state and not herself at all, and she's a totally different person today than yesterday than she was during that state of being. In fact, she's better now than I've ever seen her before. She's genuinely healing and healthy at the moment in a way that she's never been before. I mean, in the last stretch of years anyway. Like, she's been in a rough situation in terms of trying to repair her mental health with a fucking not good mental health facility colluding with her mother to oppress her and to milk the insurance company for drug treatment she never needed for marijuana addiction. Ridiculous. You know, so it's like for her, she's so much better off now. You think accountability is an FI thing? Absolutely not. Accountability is a TI thing. And that's what makes character so important. It's like, if you are an ENTP who lacks accountability, who's not being objective about yourself, then you are misusing your introverted feeling. You are allowing your introverted feeling to drive the bus when it comes to issues about yourself, but not about anybody else. And then that's the worst thing an ENTP can do. ENTPs have to be committed to objectivity and disinterested calculus about themselves more than anybody else, even. Now, note, Claire, there's the hollowness that you will experience, which is I lost my train of thought. I totally lost my train of thought. Accountability is not an FI thing at all. No. I mean, here's the thing. Was Gollum accountable to the ring? Sure. Gollum was very accountable to the ring. Was he accountable to anybody else? No. So he and his precious, precious ring had a great mutual accountability thing going on. He would follow that ring to the end of the earth, and that ring would let him put it back on his finger when he got it again. Perfect. That's FI accountability. They can, and everybody else can go fuck themselves. That's FI accountability. FI has to do with loyalty, though, too. I found my way to loyalty via means other than FI, probably. But the fact that I have an inner circle to whom I'm more loyal and hold more valuable and precious than others, and about whom I will take an interested rather than a disinterested calculus, that's FI. Does that make me accountable? It makes me accountable to them for pursuing their interests as they are accountable to me for pursuing my interests, but it makes me unaccountable in general. FI begins with the conclusion and then finds the justification. TI looks for the justification and then draws the conclusion accordingly. Is it an SI phenomenon, licking the nipple? I guess. ENTPs have to be committed to disinterested calculus about themselves more than anybody else. Isn't that what ENTPs are naturally because of OX-TI? Well, I mean, the thing is, remember that we're dominant NE users with third slot FE absolute value, and the TI is instrumental. So we have to find. It's like, for me, this ontology of walking the straight and narrow and being committed to character issues and moral agency and stuff is both an FE win and a TI win. So it enables me to use my TI more effectively because I'm arguing on the correct side of things, and it allows me to use my FE more correctly because I'm arguing on the correct side of things, and I'm considered to be a good person rather than an evil person. It's like I could try to avoid issues of moral agency entirely, but I find it unavoidable because of what I talk about, and also, therefore, since I have to take a position on it, I should take the right position on it. But beyond that, this position represents actual growth in my identity that happened when I quit drinking and included faith-based modalities into my repertoire of things. So is it possible to conceive of an ENTP who's not going to have that disinterested calculus about themselves? Yes, because remember, the TI is not an absolute value, it's an instrumental value. And if they can find a way that works for them on their NE, NI, FE level, TI level that doesn't require them to tell the truth, and there's plenty of instances where that's the case for ENTPs. In other words, there are lots of instances where we as ENTPs recognize that this lie here works better than the actual truth. Nobody would ever figure it out if we were to just insert it there. And it's unfigureoutable, for example. We know whether or not it's possible to get caught in that thing. And the long-term rhetorical risks in making that lie, how much baggage does it carry forward in retaining it and stuff like that. We're kind of aware of that implicitly, and we know we can get away with that shit. And so you have to choose not to. I don't Reddit. I occasionally will look on things on there because I get some sort of emails about it, like some sort of notification about some things from Reddit sometimes. I'm not sure why. But yeah, R-Claire, I'd recommend that you get with an INFJ probably. But whether or not that'll ultimately work for you, I'm not sure. I would definitely say you want to get with another meta-analyst. Meta-analyst being INFJ, INTP, ENTP are the main three meta-analysts. ENFJ is the other one, but they don't play as much like a meta-analyst because they have that absolute value SE. ESFPs are executors. That is to say, they take actual action on things that are particularly important to them for some reason. So yeah, you're an executor. ESFPs, ESTJs, ISTJs, and ISFPs are the executors. I mean, I think ISFJ is a good possibility too, R-Claire. I would avoid the ESFJ, and the reason is because they're NI-polar, and so you'll never get through to them with the truth. You'll never get through to them with the truth. You may find a similar problem with ISFJs. That is to say, they are not completely blind to the truth, but Sapphic Vampire. I mean, what did I say that would provoke that kind of response from any sane human being? This is what the message said. Oh, God fucking damn it, Eric. Would you just get the fuck over yourself? Like, come on, man. Everything you do, just a point of ridicule at this point because you're just being stupid. Like, what did I possibly say that could provoke that response? You know, there's absolutely nothing.
Well, how are the conversations wise? I think what you'd find as an ENTP with an ISFJ is that there's a natural compatibility there. That it's not necessarily compatibility, but it's a natural uh, fittedness. You understand each other's ways of being, kind of, and you respect the other person's ways of being because Sapphic Vampire, I don't know who it was. You respect the other person's ways of being because their fourth is your dominant and your fourth is their dominant. So it's like it's true that your fourth star function is a relief function. So being with that person is going to feel like a relief to some extent. And it's going to feel like meeting with an old friend for the first time in a long time. Well, yeah, what it said was, oh God, fucking damn it, Eric, would you just get the fuck over yourself? Like, come on, man, everything you do, just a point of ridicule at this point because you're just being stupid. It makes me wonder why this Sapphic Vampire is so interested in my channel if they hate me so much. Why are you watching it? You know? I don't understand. Yeah, I thought about that sort of stuff, Tom Dixon. I probably should go back through the live streams and clip out useful chunks and upload them separately as videos. For sure. I should do that. If I had a lot of money, I'd hire someone to do it for me, I guess. Well, because you have a particularist dominant function and a particularist tool function. So to be a meta-analyst is to have a universalist universalist. To be an analyst is universalist particularist. To be an executive is particularist universalist, and to be an executor is particularist particularist. Do I hold online lessons? I mean, I do online work. I meet with people and stuff. But I'd be interested in just chatting with you, or Claire, even if we would just chat, just for no reason. I wouldn't record or anything, just to talk with you because it seems pretty clear you're an ENTP female, and those are rare. And I'd like to chat with you and see, answer whatever questions you have or whatever, just because I feel a sense of camaraderie with younger ENTPs. They're very rare, and it's like, to the extent that I have any advice to give to people, I think the only people who are really well suited to listen to me are other ENTPs. I think that's kind of true for every type. You need somebody. I don't have for myself an older ENTP that can give me any wisdom that I can identify anywhere, but I have some to offer. And ENTPs are not inclined to look to others for wisdom. They're inclined to look to their own ideation for it. But there are, I wish I had an older ENTP to ask questions of and see what he had to say. Because I recognize it as being talking to myself in the future, Why is SE considered doing things, willpower, force, aggression, when it is a perceiving function, not a judgment function? Should not of those attributes be in the TE camp? Well, I don't consider it force or aggression. I consider it execution. In other words, the decision-making time is over. We've made the decision. Now we need to do it. It's the end of deliberation. It's the end of ideational process and the beginning of the executional process. So it's not so much force or aggression. It's perceived as those things by NTPs, 8-slot SE, 7-slot SE, NFPs as well. We perceive SE as forceful or aggressive because where it is in the stack means that defines, like 8-slot defines what you think is evil, basically. The worst thing you can do to me is to force me to do something. To force a decision, to force action in the real world before I'm done ideating is evil. It's like allow the ideational process and deliberation process to complete and then take action. Of course, as an ENTP, I'm never sure if I'm really wanted to complete, but I'm more able to complete it than INTP, you know? Right. Nobody wants to be forced to do something, but what counts as being forced to do something? So for me, if the decision has been made and the plan of action is settled on, that's potentially forcing me to do something because I wasn't done talking about it yet, you know? Cool. I wonder if your friend the ENTP knows he's an ENTP. That's kind of relevant too. It's like I have ENTP questions for an ENTP who understands they're an ENTP, so I can ask certain kind of questions and have them answered in certain ways, you know? I stink right now. My pits are just alive with pleasure. I can smell them just sitting here. Well, Cloud, I mean, my real world theory, my theory does apply in the real world because I get to see you do this all the time. You're not interested in the universalist justification for things. You're not interested in the universalist applicability to things. You're interested instead in the particularist applicability of things because I never do things in the world and it's all, you're all particular. You're saying the problem, Eric, is you aren't particularist in your frame and particularist in your tool. And of course, you're just saying the problem is, Eric, you're not an SFP like me. Well, I mean, again, Cloud, obviously nobody likes to be forced against your will. But the point is, what comprises forcing? Probably an ISFP is going to be very interested in, let's quit talking about it and we can come to a decision. That's not going to bother an ISFP. They're going to agree with that basic notion. Let's stop talking about it endlessly and make a decision. That's totally consistent with ISFP's basic nature. Whereas that's totally inconsistent with INFP's basic nature. They never want to stop deliberating and do something. Anytime the deliberation is required, the deliberation end, and that some sort of choice be made, often their choice is to not make a choice and default to the whatever happens then, because that's how anti-SE they are. So if in fact a choice were made that they were a part of but they didn't have the chance to make the choice themselves, they'll feel forced. In what case do ENTJs use FE? Do they hate it? No, ENTJs use it the same way that ESTJs use it. They use it as subsumed by the TE frame, as something you have to do to TE properly. Just as I see SE as something you have to do to NE properly. In other words, to get my words out on the metaphysical plane, I have to at least push go live and start live streaming. I can't just say it here in my room and expect anybody to hear it. What am I doing right now? What was I just thinking about doing? I'm not sure. But I think I'm going to wrap this live stream. Oh, I was going to play the guitar a little bit. Let me play the guitar for a bit, and then I'm going to wrap the live stream after that.
This is by Willie Nelson? I didn't know that. Such a good song. Here we go. I'm writing a song all about you. A true song as real as my tears. But there's no need to fear it, 'cause no one will hear it. Sad songs and waltzes aren't selling this year. I'll tell all about how you cheated. I'd like for the whole world to hear. I'd like to get even with you 'cause you're leaving. And sad songs and waltzes aren't selling this year. It's a good thing that I'm not a star. You don't know how lucky you are. Though my record may say it, no one will play it. 'Cause sad songs and waltzes aren't selling this year. Though my records may say it, no one will play it. Sad songs and waltzes aren't selling this year. That's a good one. Yes, indeed. That's a good one. You won't admit you love me. You won't admit you love me. And so, how am I ever to know? You always tell me, perhaps. A million times I've asked you, and then I ask you over again. You only answer, perhaps. If you can't make your mind up, we'll never get started. And I don't want to wind up being parted, broken hearted. So if you really love me, say yes. But if you don't, dear, confess. And please don't tell me, perhaps. That's a good one too. It's a good one. Yeah. Let's see.
met someone at the dog show. She was holding my left arm, but everyone was acting normal, so I tried to look nonchalant. We both said, I really love you. The Shriners loaned us cars. We raced up and down the sidewalk 20,000 million times. Why did they send her over anyone else? How should I react? These things happen to other people. They don't happen at all. In fact, when you're following an angel, doesn't mean you have to throw your body off a building. When they're calling you a pinhead, calling you an angel, calling you the nicest thing. I heard they had a space program when you sing, you can't hear, there's no air. Sometimes I think I kinda like that, and other times I think I'm already there. Gonna ask for my admission. Gonna speak to the man in charge. The secretary says he's on another line. Can I hold for a long, long time? I found out she's an angel. I don't think she knows I know. I'm worried that something might happen to me if anyone ever finds out. Why did they send her over anyone else? How should I react? These things happen to other people. They don't happen at all. In fact, when you're following an angel, doesn't mean you have to throw your body off a building. When we're at a meeting, I'm an angel calling you the nicest thing. I heard they had a space program when you sing, you can't hear, there's no air. Sometimes I think I kinda like that, and other times I think I'm already there. That's a good one. Um, hmm. 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 Hmm.
I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, dark and hysterical. I should be allowed to glue my poster. I should be allowed to think. I should be allowed to glue my poster. I should be allowed to think. I should be allowed to think. I should be allowed to think. Random women occurs to me. Necessarily paper stains on the gray utility pole. I saw the worst bands of my generation applied by magic marker to drywall. I should be allowed to shoot my mouth off. I should have a call-in show. I should be allowed to glue my poster. I should be allowed to think. I should be allowed to think. I should be allowed to think. That's, yeah. Piece of dirt. Piece of dirt. No, that's not very well. What is this one? Where your eyes don't go, a filthy scarecrow waves his broomstick arms and does a parody of each unconscious thing you do. When you turn around to look, it's gone behind you and it's wearing your confused expression. Where your eyes don't go, where your eyes don't go, a part of you is hovering. It's a nightmare that you'll never be discovering. You're free to come and go and talk like Curtis Blow, but there's a pair of eyes in the back of your head. Every jumbled pile of person has a thinking part that wonders what the part that isn't thinking of. Should you worry when the skull head is in front of you, or is it worse because it's always waiting where your eyes don't go? That's a challenging song to play, actually. These are good ones. I'd like to learn how to play some of these ones. I'm not going to play that one, though. I already got that one. Let's see here. What's that one called? Stalk of Wheat. That looks hard to play. Looks hard too, probably. A lot of these tend to be challenging.
I'm planning revenge. Read my mind, yes, I'm planning revenge. Front row, me and me, girl, lost some sound. I don't know about that one. Difficult. Yeah. Yeah. Chord. I give you cup and face to the window in darkness to make out a spiraling shape. Putting all reason aside, you exchange what you've got for a thing that's hypnotic and strange. The spiraling shape will make you go insane. Everyone wants to see that groovy thing. And nobody knows what it's really like, but everyone says it's great. And they heard it from the spiral in their eyes. That's a pretty good song, but too hard to play again. All these songs are too hard to play. What am I doing anyway here? The color of infinity inside an empty glass. I'm squinting my eye and turning off and on and on and off the light. It's for this experimental film, which nobody knows about, and which I'm just figuring out what's going to go in my experimental film. Yeah, you're all gonna be in this experimental film, and even though I can't explain it, I already know how great it is. I already know the ending, it's the part that makes your face implode. I don't know what makes your face implode, but that's the way the movie is. And in my experimental film, which nobody knows about, and which I'm still figuring out his face implodes in my experimental film. Yeah, you're all gonna be in this experimental film, and even though I can't explain it, I already know how great it is. Even though I can't explain it, I already know how great it is. That's pretty great. I like that one a lot. Yeah, that's a good one. It's a fun one to play. That's a fun cover. And in my experimental film, when nobody knows about him, we're just figuring out the damn and I experiment. Yeah, it's all gonna be in this experimental film, and even the winning proposition. I've been leaving on my things. So in the morning, when the morning bird sings, there's still dinner on my dinner jacket till the dinner bell rings. That's too hard. Too difficult to play. As a wounded foreign nation. That's too hard to play too. That person on it. Anyway. Okay, what am I doing? Still live streaming. Fucking around. Forgetting all about what I'm doing. Okay, well, goodbye everybody. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.